The day Remy Thorncraft became the most hated man in Lakeside Estates was, ironically, the same day he seized the reins of its power. It all began with a $500 fishing fine, a penalty levied by Karen Wellington, the iron-fisted HOA president, for the simple act of Remy fishing with his grieving 14-year-old daughter Solon in the community lake. What Karen and her cronies didn't know was that Remy, a recently retired venture capitalist at 42 with a net worth in the millions, possessed not only the financial means to fight back, but also a deep well of righteous indignation and strategic acumen honed over 15 years in high-stakes finance. Remy and Solon had moved to Lakeside Estates, seeking a fresh start and a place to heal after the devastating loss of his wife, Rachel, to cancer. Fishing, an activity they had all cherished, was their fragile lifeline to normalcy. The community, with its upscale homes and a picturesque 6-acre lake, seemed idyllic. The realtor's hesitant mention of a dedicated HOA president, Karen Wellington, should have been a red flag, but Remy, accustomed to difficult personalities, underestimated the depths of neighborhood bureaucracy. The rude awakening came on a quiet Saturday morning. Solon had just caught her second bluegill, a rare smile gracing her face, when Karen Wellington descended upon them. Impeccably dressed in expensive athleisure wear, sporting the quintessential "I want to speak to the manager" haircut, and armed with a tablet, she curtly informed Remy that fishing was explicitly prohibited by a recent amendment, issuing a $500 fine on the spot. Remy's calm protestations that the realtor had highlighted fishing as an amenity and that he'd received no notification of the ban were met with icy condescension. Karen suggested he check his spam folder, implying his ignorance was his own failing. The true motive, Remy suspected, wasn't environmental or safety concerns, as Karen claimed. Her dismissive glance at their modest fishing gear and her pointed remarks about maintaining certain standards and new residents struggling to adapt to the community culture reeked of thinly veiled snobbery and something more sinister. Solon's tears, a fresh wave of grief washing over her, solidified Remy's resolve. He would pay the fine for now, but this was far from over. That evening, after confirming no email notification had ever been sent, Remy began his investigation. Karen Wellington, he discovered, had reigned as HOA president for 8 years and owned a luxury real estate company. Social media revealed her hosting lavish, alcohol-fueled parties at the very same lake, apparently exempt from her own stringent rules. Crucially, the HOA documents listed the lake as a common amenity, with no clear indication of the HOA's absolute control. As he watched Karen and her friends enjoying wine by the lake, a plan began to form. His first ally was Merrick Henderson, a retired attorney and longtime resident, who grimly dubbed Karen the neighborhood dictator. Merrick revealed a critical piece of information. The lake wasn't owned by the HOA, but by Meridian Development Corporation, the original developers. The HOA merely held a 30-year recreational lease, set to expire in less than 2 months. Rumor had it Meridian was in financial distress, and Karen was secretly negotiating to purchase the lake herself, not for the community, but for her own real estate company, with plans to reduce public access and build more luxury homes on the shoreline. This explained the sudden fishing ban, a strategic move to clear the way. Merrick introduced Remy to Samuel Washington, a retired local bank owner who had also experienced Karen's discriminatory practices. Samuel had meticulously compiled a database tracking HOA activities, revealing a disturbing pattern. Homeowners of color and new residents received violation notices at a significantly higher rate. Properties plagued by these violations often sold below market value, only to be snapped up by shell companies linked to Wellington properties and resold at a high profit after minor renovations. The lake, Samuel and Merrick concluded, was Karen's endgame, a lucrative development opportunity. Leveraging his venture capital background, Remy delved into Meridian Development's financials, confirming their precarious situation. The lake property, valued around $300,000, was a prime candidate for quick liquidation. Simultaneously, Merrick began organizing clandestine meetings with other disgruntled residents. Stories poured out. James Morris, fined for Christmas lights after questioning Karen at a town council meeting. Maria Gonzalez, whose foster children were banned from the pool. Diana Winters, a young widow, harassed with multiple bogus violations after Karen suggested the community wasn't the right fit for her. Karen's tactics were clear: isolate, pressure, and either force compliance or drive out opposition. This heavy-handedness, however, backfired, swelling the ranks of their burgeoning underground resistance. Remy's own financial investigation into Karen Wellington revealed a surprising vulnerability. Wellington Properties was heavily leveraged. Karen was not just pursuing profit with the lake deal, she was fighting for her financial survival. This made her more dangerous, but also more susceptible to a well-timed countermove. Through Robert Chun, a real estate broker with insider knowledge, Remy learned that Karen was struggling to finance her $300,000 offer for the lake, and that Meridian, desperate for cash, might entertain a better, faster offer. The pieces were falling into place. Remy's strategy, guided by Samuel and Merrick, was to let Karen publicly commit to her lake improvement project and the associated special assessment on homeowners before he made his move. As Remy's activities became known, Karen escalated her harassment. Bogus violation notices for Remy piled up. Weed control, landscaping, mailbox height, even the shade of his garage door, totaling nearly $2,000 in fines. The targeting extended to anyone associated with their group. The most egregious incident came when Solon's bicycle, left momentarily in their driveway, resulted in an immediate violation, complete with photos, proving someone was actively monitoring their home. When Solon came home from school crying because classmates, instigated by Karen's allies, were calling her family troublemakers, Remy nearly decided to sell and leave. Merrick convinced him otherwise, reminding him that this was exactly Karen's modus operandi. That same evening, the environmental assessment on the lake came back clean, and Meridian's board accepted Remy's all-cash offer of $350,000 for the lake property, with a 7-day closing. The purchase was made through a newly created LLC, Thorncroft Holdings, to maintain secrecy. Remy also discovered Karen was attempting to bypass HOA rules requiring 75% homeowner approval for her proposed special assessment, planning to push it through with a simple majority. The day after Remy officially closed on the lake, Karen, blissfully unaware, held her special HOA meeting, unveiling her grand, elevating lakeside estate's vision, complete with architectural renderings of a members-only lakeside lounge that would eliminate prime fishing spots. She launched a smear campaign against Remy, implying he was financially unstable and undermining property values. Samuel's attempt to defend Remy was met with a vicious public humiliation by Karen, who dredged up a long-resolved tax issue. When another resident, Safra Duskland, timidly suggested a community vote, Karen subtly threatened her flower shop's lease renewal, silencing her. Karen even used her connection with Mayor James Wilson to instigate random safety inspections and permit inquiries on Remy's home. The tipping point for Remy came with a call from Meridian's lawyer. Karen had just been informed the lake was sold. Within hours, a visibly cracking Karen was on Remy's doorstep, demanding to know if he had sabotaged her deal. Remy feigned ignorance, but pointedly mentioned the recreational use agreement's imminent expiration and the new owner's discretion in renewing it. Karen's face paled. Over the next week, Karen scrambled. She held secret board meetings, enlisted the mayor to explore zoning challenges, all baseless, according to Merrick, and tried to rally the community. Meanwhile, Remy, now the silent owner, consulted with water quality experts. Discovering the lake suffered from neglect and chemical runoff, the HOA's environmental concerns were a sham. He also hired security and planned a restoration project. Karen's desperate gambit was a massive, original homeowners-only lakeside party, a defiant assertion of community rights. This was the moment Remy chose for his grand reveal. As the party was in full swing, Remy, accompanied by Merrick, Samuel, his attorney, and a police officer, calmly took the microphone. He announced himself as the new legal owner of the lake and the surrounding shoreline, presenting the deed. He then declared the HOA's recreational use agreement terminated, citing their neglect of water quality as grounds, though it was expiring shortly anyway, and gave the stunned partygoers 15 minutes to vacate his private property, with the officer present to ensure an orderly departure. Karen was apoplectic, but her threats of lawsuits were empty. The crowd dispersed, many glaring at Karen, some quietly congratulating Remy. Within days, private property, no trespassing signs encircled the lake. Remy announced plans to convert it into a natural fish conservation and educational area, highlighting the years of environmental neglect under HOA management. This revelation, coupled with leaks about Karen's self-serving development plans, dramatically shifted public opinion against her. Her lawsuits were dismissed, and her attempts to use the HOA for further retaliation faltered as residents began questioning her motives. Safra Duskland's courageous stand at the next HOA meeting, detailing Karen's manipulation and misuse of funds, opened the floodgates. Other residents shared their stories of abuse. A full financial audit was demanded. As Karen's support crumbled, Remy announced a free fishing passes for all community children program, with one pointed exception. Children of current HOA board members were ineligible until their parents resigned. This masterstroke of petty yet effective pressure worked. One by one, Karen's allies on the board, faced with their own children's disappointment, began to resign. Karen's final desperate act was to attempt to bribe Merrick Henderson, offering to clear his past violations and give him a paid position on a restructured board if he helped convince Remy to sell the lake. Merrick, a retired ethics attorney, recorded the entire conversation. The ultimate downfall came when security cameras captured Karen and two loyal board members trespassing late one night, attempting to contaminate the lake water, likely to support her false pollution claims. The police were called, and Karen was charged with criminal trespassing and attempted environmental contamination. The ensuing investigation into HOA finances during her tenure uncovered misappropriation of funds and a pattern of unethical real estate practices. Remy then called a community meeting, excluding the remaining HOA leadership. He laid out his proposal. He would transfer ownership of the lake to a new community trust, contingent on a complete HOA leadership overhaul, fair regulation review, and an independent ethics committee. Then came his final, stunning revelation. Over the past month, he had quietly purchased the mortgage notes on nearly 20% of the community's homes, including Karen Wellington's. While assuring residents he had no intention of foreclosing, and even offering to refinance their notes at below-market rates, the leverage was undeniable. The vote to replace the HOA leadership was nearly unanimous. Karen Wellington resigned in disgrace, facing criminal charges and multiple civil lawsuits. Her real estate empire crumbled, and she eventually sold her house and left Lakeside Estates. Safra Duskland became the new HOA president, ushering in an era of transparency and reform. The lake was officially renamed Rachel's Lake, and Remy transferred its ownership to the Community Trust, ensuring its accessibility for all forever. 3 months later, Remy and Solon hosted a community fishing day at Rachel's Lake. The event was a symbol of healing and unity. As Solon leaned against him, smiling, saying her mom would be proud, Remy knew that true justice sometimes meant rebuilding what was broken. A year later, Lakeside Estates was a model for HOA reform, and Remy, though declining a mayoral run, continued to foster community through a scholarship fund in Rachel's name, proving that sometimes changing the rules of the game is the most powerful victory of all.